Okay, picture this. A landscape just stretching out, vast, wild, totally unknown to most folks back east. A place where every mountain range hid something new, every river was an obstacle, and just making it through the day was, well, the main goal. Into this world stepped a certain kind of person, the American mountain man. Explorers, trappers, guides, and maybe one of the most legendary figures whose life honestly feels more like a movie script than history was Jim Bridger. So today we're doing a deep dive into the life of Jim Bridger. Definitely one of the most iconic and, complex figures from that whole fur trade era. Mountain man, explorer, scout, guide. He wore a lot of hats. Our mission here is to kind of peel back the layers. Look at where he started incredibly humble beginnings and how he ended up with this almost mythical reputation. We want to try and separate the actual man from the legend, and figure out what his real impact was on the American West. Because the sources, they really paint this picture of someone who, despite major disadvantages, left this huge mark. It's fascinating. Okay, let's unpack this right from the start. Imagine being, 18 years old. Can't read, can't write. You're stuck working for a blacksmith. And then you see this ad. An ad that basically changes your entire life's direction. That's pretty much James Felix Bridger, born 1804, Virginia. Family moves near St. Louis. Then, boom, orphaned at 13. No school, illiterate, just grinding away as a blacksmith apprentice. When you think about that, what jumps out at you? How did that shape him?
Well, it's striking, isn't it? He starts with basically zero formal advantages, no education in the traditional sense. But his later life just screams natural ability, navigation, observation, languages. It's incredible. It really shows that, knowledge doesn't just come from books. His education was the wilderness. That was his classroom.
That's a great way to put it. And this ad you mentioned, it was in the St. Louis paper, the Missouri Republican, March 20, 1822. That's the spark. He signs up for General William Henry Ashley's fur trapping trip up the Missouri River. And he's heading out there with guys who would also become legends, like Jedediah Smith. It's just wild. He's illiterate, but the sources say he ends up speaking, 7 languages? French, Spanish, several Native American languages. How does someone with no formal schooling pull that off? What does that tell us about maybe different kinds of intelligence out there on the frontier?
It speaks volumes, really, about his innate smarts and his ability to just adapt. Out there, survival hinged on understanding your surroundings and, crucially, the people in them. Languages were the key to trade, to negotiation, sometimes just to staying alive. And physically, people described him, at least 6 feet tall, straight as an Indian, which was contemporary shorthand for being agile and having great posture, muscular and quick, but not nervous.
Okay.
About 160 pounds, I figured. And eyes like an eagle, apparently. Piercing, flashing when he told a story. Combine that physical presence with this almost photographic memory they talk about.
Right, the mapping thing.
Exactly. He could apparently map huge parts of the Rockies just from memory. So you have this blend. Language skills, incredible spatial awareness, and physical toughness, all in someone who couldn't read a word. That's not just skilled, it's a different kind of genius, perfectly suited for that world.
So he wasn't just walking through the landscape, he was absorbing it, mapping it in his head. Yeah, with that kind of mental map-making ability, it makes sense. His career took off pretty fast. He wasn't just a trapper for long.
No, he moved up quickly. By 1830, he and some partners actually bought out Jedediah Smith and others to form their own company, the Rocky Mountain Fur Company.
Okay, big step.
Huge. And his range of operation was just immense. We're talking from the Canadian border down to southern Colorado, and then west from the Missouri River out to Idaho and Utah. He covered serious ground.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing, right? There were controversies early on. The Hugh Glass story, that's probably the most famous or infamous one. It's even inspired movies like The Revenant.
Yeah, that's the one. So 1823, Hugh Glass gets absolutely mauled by a grizzly bear, just torn up. The story goes that Bridger, the sources call him Bridges, but confirm it was him supposedly volunteered to stay behind with Glass, who everyone thought was dying.
Okay. Seems noble enough.
Well, that's the twist. He and another guy, John Fitzgerald, allegedly didn't stay long. They supposedly abandoned Glass, took his rifle and knife, and went back to the main party, reporting him dead.
Oof. That's rough. How do we even process that today? Was it just the harsh reality of survival back then, or something darker about Bridger himself?
It's a tough question and a really dark moment early in his career. It definitely highlights the brutal choices people faced. Survival ethics were different. But it's important, I think, to mention there weren't direct witnesses pinning it definitively on Bridger being the one who made the call to leave. And later, when a historian asked him point blank, he denied it.
So some ambiguity there.
Yeah, it shows how fast legend and rumor could mix with fact, especially in such an extreme environment where survival was everything.
Makes you think, doesn't it? The kind of desperate decisions people made back then, and how much of the legend we remember is, well, maybe polished, or maybe built on those hard choices.
That's a good point. History isn't always neat.
Definitely not. So the frontier was obviously challenging, morally complex, as that glass incident shows. But Bridger wasn't just surviving these things. He was actively pushing into the unknown, making some pretty incredible discoveries. Tell us about those. What did he find?
Right, he wasn't just getting by. He was mapping the void, fundamentally changing what people back east knew about the continent. Like, in the fall of 1824, he becomes the first known European-descended person to see the Great Salt Lake.
By bull butt, right?
Yeah, just gets in this crude boat made of bison hides stretched over a frame and paddles out onto this massive, salty lake. He actually thought it might be part of the Pacific Ocean at first because it was so salty. Imagine the bets that took.
Just pure nerve, heading out into something totally uncharted like that.
Yeah.
And it didn't stop there, did it?
Not at all. He was also one of the very first non-Native Americans to explore the Yellowstone area, and the first recorded non-Native person to describe its geysers and hot springs. People back east didn't believe his stories at first.
Geysers erupting, mud pots boiling, sounds like tall tales.
Exactly. He also described this place south of Yellowstone Lake, the parting of the waters, a creek where water flowed one way towards the Pacific, the other way towards the Atlantic. An incredibly astute observation about the Continental Divide.
Wow.
And then there's the story of him taking a raft down the rapids of the Bighorn River. Apparently he was the only man known to have tried that and actually survived. These weren't just trips. They were feats that built his reputation as someone utterly fearless and deeply connected to the land.
So from this fearless explorer, he evolves again, right, into this master guide, literally carving out the paths for westward expansion.
Yeah.
Tell us about Fort Bridger.
Right. In 1843, he and his partner, Louis Vasquez, set up Fort Bridger. It was on the Black's Fork of the Green River, smack dab on the Oregon Trail in what's now Wyoming. And this wasn't just some little trading post.
No, it became crucial strategically.
Absolutely crucial. It was perfectly placed, a vital spot for pioneers heading west to get supplies, fix their wagons, rest their animals before the next really tough stretch. It was like an island of support in this huge wilderness.
But this period also has another shadow over it, doesn't it? The Donner Party incident in 1846.
Ah, yes. Another controversy. Bridger and Vasquez apparently met the Donner Party at the fort. They reportedly told them that this shortcut proposed by Lansford Hastings, the one they were considering, was a fine level road with plenty of water and grass, except for one 40-mile waterless stretch.
Yeah, and we all know how that ended. That 40-mile stretch was more like 80 miles. And the fine level road was anything but. It slowed them down disastrously, setting them up for that horror in the Sierra Nevada. That's more than just bad advice. People died. What does this say about the weight on a guide's shoulders back then, even for someone like Bridger?
It's a stark illustration of the immense responsibility and the razor-thin margin for error. Even an expert, someone who knew the land better than almost anyone, could potentially misjudge or miscommunicate something critical with terrible consequences. It reminds us that these legendary figures were still human, operating with limited information in a wildly unpredictable environment. But despite that tragedy, his reputation as a guide continued to grow.
Right. He apparently had this knack for just sizing up a wagon train, understanding what they needed, and giving them solid advice for the journey west.
Exactly. And he guided military expeditions, too. He was involved in the Utah War in 57-58. He was chief guide for the Reynolds expedition heading to Yellowstone. In 59, they explored places like Jackson Hole, pushing through deep snow. He kept guiding into the 1860s for surveys at Fort Laramie.
And he wasn't just guiding pioneers. He served as a scout during Red Cloud's War, right? He was at Fort Phil Kearny during some really intense fights, like the Fetterman fight and the Wagon Box fight.
Yes, he saw direct military action as a scout. He was finally discharged from service in July 1868. His experience was just invaluable across the board.
And he wasn't just following trails, he was making them. Tell us about Bridger Pass. That seems huge.
Bridger Pass was a game changer. He discovered it in 1850 while guiding the Stansbury expedition. Why was it so important? Because it offered a better route west. It bypassed the traditional South Pass and actually shortened the Oregon Trail by about 61 miles.
61 miles. That's a big deal when you're crossing by wagon.
A huge deal. And this pass, located down in south-central Wyoming, became the preferred route for pretty much everything that followed. the overland stagecoach line, the Pony Express, the main line of the Union Pacific Railroad.
Wow, the railroad too?
Yep. And even today, Interstate 80 follows that same basic corridor across the Continental Divide. So the path he found is still being used by millions of people.
That's amazing. Driving I-80 through Wyoming.
Yeah.
You're basically on Bridger's path. I'll definitely think about that next time. And he found other routes too, right? Like the Bridger Trail.
He did. In 1864, he blazed the Bridger Trail. It was an alternative way to get from Wyoming up to the gold fields in Montana, specifically designed to be safer by avoiding the really dangerous Bozeman Trail, which ran through contested Sioux territory. He really knew how to read the land and the human conflicts on it.
This deep connection he had, it wasn't just professional, was it? It extended into his personal life, especially with Native American communities.
Very much so. His personal life was deeply intertwined with the indigenous cultures. He actually married 3 Native American women over his lifetime. First, a Flathead woman he apparently called Emma, then 2 Shoshone women. One of them was Mary Washakie Bridger, the daughter of the respected Shoshone chief Washakie. He had 5 children altogether from these marriages.
But that life came with incredible hardship too, didn't it? He faced a lot of family tragedy.
He really did. It's quite heartbreaking. His first daughter, Marianne, was caught up in the Whitman massacre and died there. His son Felix served in the military but died of illness later on Bridger's own farm. Another daughter, Josephine, also died young. In the end, only his daughter Virginia survived him and was able to care for him in his final years. It's just a constant reminder of how precarious life was, even for someone as tough and savvy as Bridger.
Definitely puts things in perspective.
Yeah.
Yet, amidst all this hardship and the controversies, there's also this other side of Bridger the storyteller, the guy known for his wit and maybe some exaggeration.
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge part of his legend. He was famous for spinning yarns. Some of them turned out to be spot on, like his descriptions of Yellowstone's geysers and hot springs. People laughed them off as impossible fantasies.
Until they were verified later.
Exactly. But then you had the pure tall tales, the ones clearly meant to entertain, maybe stretch the truth just a bit, like the story of the petrified forest, where even the birds were petrified and sang petrified songs.
Oh, I like that one. And the "they killed me" story.
Classic Bridger. He'd tell about being chased by, say, 100 Cheyenne warriors cornered in a box canyon. The listener's hanging on every word asks, "What happened then, Mr. Bridger?" And he just deadpans, "They killed me."
Brilliant. Just shuts the story down.
Perfect timing. And he became so linked with these kinds of stories that eventually people just started attributing any outrageous frontier tale to him, whether he told it or not.
Why do you think those tall tales became such a big part of his legacy? What does that tell us about that whole era?
Well, I think it reflects this need for larger-than-life stories to match the larger-than-life landscape. The West was epic, it was dangerous, it was unbelievable in many ways. The tall tales were a way to process that, maybe make light of the danger, and they cemented Bridger as this figure who had seen and done it all, and maybe then some.
Sort of myth-making in real time.
Pretty much. Entertainment, legend-building, coping mechanism, all rolled into one. But, life eventually caught up with him. By his early 60s, his famous eyesight started to go. By 1875, he was blind.
Wow. For a scout, a guide. That must have been devastating.
Terribly so. He also suffered from other ailments like goiter and rheumatism. And adding insult to injury, he had money troubles. He spent years trying unsuccessfully to get the government to pay him back rent for their use of Fort Bridger after he'd leased it to them.
A tough end after such an adventurous life. But he lived a long time for that era. He died on his farm near Kansas City, Missouri, July 17, 1881. He was 77.
A long, full, incredibly eventful life.
So when you look back at it all, what's the takeaway? How does this illiterate blacksmith's apprentice end up leaving such a massive mark on American history and geography?
I think his legacy speaks to that different kind of intelligence we talked about, that practical, adaptive genius honed by the wilderness. I mean, just look at the map. Fort Bridger, the town, Bridger, Montana, Bridger, South Dakota, the Bridger Mountains in Wyoming and Montana.
Right, to Bridger Wilderness, Bridger Bowl ski area.
Bridger Teton National Forest, Bridger Pass, the Jim Bridger Power Station, schools, even that Bridger rifle trophy for a college football game. His name is literally stamped all over the West.
It really is.
His life story, orphaned kid to legendary explorer and guide, it just resonates. It's a story about resilience, about mastering your environment, about how exploring the unknown can leave a legacy far beyond written records. He truly blurred that line between history and legend.
And his story keeps getting told, right? In movies, TV shows. Van Heflin played him, Carl Swenson. Bits of his story, or maybe his archetype, pop up in things like The Revenant.
Sure.
Even Brad Pitt's character in Inglourious Basterds was supposedly descended from it.
Yeah, the archetype endures,
Yeah.
the quintessential mountain man.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something to maybe chew on. How did Bridger, this man who couldn't read or write, develop such a profound, almost instinctual knowledge of the land and its people? A different kind of literacy, maybe.
Yeah.
And what is his legacy, especially those tall tales that got attached to him? Tell us about how we remember history and historical figures, particularly those from the frontier. How much of what we remember is documented fact, and how much is the story we collectively need or want to believe about the Wild West?